Yo, Sparks, what the heck is up? Terragaze here to bring you some more magic content. So, if you remember last time, we had just planeswalked out of Innistrad, and we're looking for somewhere new to land, and a place to land we have found. I really hope you packed your adventuring gear because we're now entering Zendikar. So as your tour guide, I would suggest that we first look at how the planes exist as a whole and what its laws are, so to speak. Zendikar is a plane rich in mana and in life, so rich in fact that it has the biggest forests and the deepest oceans, and apart from both the sea and the land beasts alike, there's also a huge population of merfolk, and there's some outposts sprinkled across the land dedicated to humans. Though being a humanoid is kind of rough on Zendikar, this world is literally made up of mana and it almost acts as a living being over a normal landscape. The plane has royals, and these are these naturally occurring and powerful defenses that the planes can deploy, and similar to antibodies in a human, they respond and fight to any foreign objects. But unlike the human cell, these take the form of a cataclysmic hurricane, fierce tectonic shifts, or even raging elementals that can seemingly happen on cue with Zendikar's world soul. However, even with this amazing defense, there's always those who wish to use Zendikar's for its nigh unlimited mana supply. To start this journey, we're actually going to have to go way back. I'm talking way before Zendikar even had any of its current inhabitants. A certain supervillain had his eye on the plains first, if you will, and who was this tyrannical evildoer, you might ask? Well, none other than world conqueror and slayer of most vibes himself, Ob Nixilis. So before the mending happened that took away the planeswalker's near omnipotent powers and immortality, Ob Nixilis was actually a really big deal. He would travel planes to planes and bring them all to his rule just because, well, he wanted to. Then when he set out to do his goal, he would just annihilate entire populations. He even got a hold of the Chain Veil, the same one Liliana used. Unfortunately for him, its raw power corrupted him, turning him into a demon. He wanted to cure this affliction, so he set out to Zendikar to siphon and use its powerful magic to hopefully undo the curse. However, Zendikar's chaos magic actually overloaded his spark, the very thing that granted him his immense power, and he lost it. So now the mighty Ob Nixilis, who just got okie dokied by the actual plane of Zendikar, should speak volumes to how strong this plane is alone. However, Ob Nixilis' story does not end here. The story of Zendikar starts almost near the creation of the multiverse itself, with the birth of the beings known as the Eldrazi. These titans belong to the Blind Eternity, and this is a space between the planes. You can call it the Void if you want. They basically consume worlds to feed their insatiable hunger, and they turn them into lifeless husks. We know very little about these terrifying beings, but luckily we have folks around us who want to learn more about them. Enter the spirit dragon Ugin. Learning of these terrifying horrors and these threats, he seeked out to gather as much information as he could, learning actually their names, Imbracul, Ulamog, and Kozilek. He set out a plan to imprison these beings and hopefully save the multiverse. I think now would be a good time to talk about the planeswalker Nahiri. She's the Lithomancer, and in my last video we actually briefly talked about her, but this is her home plane and we'll be seeing a lot of her, as well as many others. Ugin, being a brilliant elder dragon, actually set Nahiri on a mission to save the multiverse thousands of years ago, informing her of the Eldrazi threats. Understanding this, Nahiri uses her gift at lithomancy and made basically these powerful networks of hedrons, and hedrons are these stones that can house powerful magic, Zendikarian magic to be kind of specific, or mana. These ley lines could channel the mana from the world into a mega amp spell, and these actually had a dual purpose. The heavy condensed mana would actually attract the Eldrazi, and then they would also in the same front act as a binding, if you will, locking them in place. While Nahiri was working away, Ugin had one last partner he needed, Sorin Markov from Innistrad. Sorin, being an ancient being himself, has knowledge that many others do not have, and Sorin really only cares about Innistrad. He even recognized the threat the Eldrazi possessed if they happened to slurp on them next, so he decided to help. With the gang all here, they formed the group named the Three. Soren weakened their essence with blood magic, Nahiri crafted these Hedron networks that surrounded them, and Ugin binded them with his draconic runes that he etched on the very same Hedrons. Now with all three titans sealed away, the Three quickly realize that these beings will never be tamed, so someone had to be set as the protector and the guardian of this network in case something happened. Nahiri actually offered because it's her home plane and she was able to meld with the Hedron she created and slumber there for many years and can be woken up if it gets disturbed. In such a case, and if that happened, they all made a pact. If anything were to go wrong and she was awoken from her slumber, she would have to send out a signal and the others would return to battle whatever threat arose. They all agreed with this and they eventually returned to their worlds, but none could possibly foresee what would come next. Good old Nicobolas, Ugin's brother and major sinister force of the multiverse, and actually was unsurprisingly responsible for the events that followed. Nicobolas seeks ultimate power. He wants to be a god. He wants the highs he had prior to the mending. Ugin wanted to stop his brother, so they fought, and unfortunately for Ugin, Nicobolas bested him, and just before he finished him off, he siphoned his mind for any information. And when he did this, he learned about how to free the Titans. Ugin will later be resurrected as the spirit dragon, but for the purpose of Zendikar, Ugin was deceased. Fortunately, Ugin set in place an intricate locking mechanism so it could not be undone by one person or dragon alone. To do so, you need the presence of 3 sparks and a spell called the Breath of Ugin, a powerful colorless magic that Ugin specialized in but was very hard to find. Bolas would have to meet all 3 of these conditions, but why though? Bolas wants to rule these planes. Why release relentless hunger onto the world that threatens to end everything? Well, he wanted to see if they could be stopped, and he wanted to see if a band of planeswalkers would come together and stop the Eldrazi, and if they could stop them, then they would rise up to stop him, and if they could not stop the Eldrazi, then no one could stop him. With the gears inside of Bolas's heads turning, we're going to go ahead and move back to Zendikar. We need to talk about the Titans and their physical properties, methods of corruption, and also how these Titans are sealed away. So their physical bodies are dormant, but that does not mean that their influences are also dormant. These Titans are attached to an otherworldly beings in the blind eternity, so its corruption is always there. A good example of what I mean is imagine a pond, and now stick your hand into that pond. The fish inside might recognize that the hand is massive and can be a threat, but they actually have no idea the true danger the size of the human outside the water, only the hand. That is kind of what the Titans are. They are an extension of an otherworldly being, and that being we really know nothing about. So even now, with being sealed away, their corrupting nature still seeps through unbeknown to Nahiri, Ulamog's corruption being one of the key influences. Sliding over to Nahiri, and her being a Zendikar native, she's never really met a vampire outside of Soren Markov. They just don't exist on Zendikar. However, while Nahiri was in her stasis, Ulamog's corruption gave rise to Blood Chiefs, the very first progenitors of the vampire species on Zendikar. They also would make very good thralls to the wills of the Titans if they have become freed. This was not the only corruption either. Other mortal beings interpreted the Titans as gods, and each of them representing something unique in their own way. The Core and the merfolk even had shrines to these gods, not even recognizing the threat that they truly represented. These false gods would eventually show their true colors to all the multiverse to see. While Nahiri was slumbering, a slight shift in the Hedron network actually weakened the seal. Not enough to free the Titans, but just enough to let their drones run through and wreak havoc on the planes. These drones, and much like their Titans, use colorless magic to surprise the people there. Sensing something is amiss, Nahiri ends her stasis, and after realizing that this is a job for all 3, she lights the signals to summon her companions, and is met with silence. Ugin and Soren have seemingly abandoned Zendikar, and Nahiri is, well, naturally angry, but first she needs to find out what happened to the Hedrons. So she fights the drones back and uncovers a disturbance to find that, well, None other than vampires. They mistook these hedrons as things to worship and disrupted them. Nahiri has been gone for nearly 4,000 years at this point, and Zendikar has definitely changed, but never once has there been vampires apart from Soren Markov, so she knew who she was going to blame. Infuriated and thinking that he spread this vampirism to this plane, she realigned the networks and set out to find the vampire and the dragon who abandoned her. So now, with the only native planeswalker from Zendikar out of the picture, Nicobolas decided it was time to set his plan into full fruition. He was prepared to push the heroes of the multiverse to their limits and endangering his very own existence if they were unsuccessful. However, all of this happening was sorta actually by chance, and even with the invisible hand of Bolas, it was still kind of a miracle that it happened at all. So to move on, we're gonna have to talk about another planeswalker, and his name is Sarkhan. He's a planeswalker that embodies the power of dragons and has an affinity with fire and is drawn by the whispers of dragons of pure power he had not encountered before, so he wanted to go conquer it. However, unbeknownst to him, these whispers were actually Bolas, and he found him a worthy minion, so Bolas dispatched him as a champion to Zendikar to go investigate and stand guard at the Eye of Ugin, which was the lock of the Eldrazi prison. Sarkhan was given zero further instructions, and nor did he know what the Eye was. Now, with at least one planeswalker at the Eye, we're only missing 3 more pieces to the puzzle. Bolas knew that the others would not be so easy to get because they were actually heroes of good. Chandra Nalaar, a human planeswalker from Kaladesh, and Jace Beleren, which is a human planeswalker from Viren. He first tempted Chandra with the information of a powerful scroll that was locked away. This scroll had the means to create a powerful new spell, and with that information, Chandra set out and finessed the scroll and made her escape to the recommended world of Zendikar. Since the scroll was encrypted by Zendikar, it could only be learned there, another piece of the puzzle. Finally, Jace actually fell into a similar path. He actually chased Chandra and the scroll to Zendikar, and together they unlocked its secrets with the help of a local vampire guide who led them to the Eye of Ugin. However, as soon as they arrived, they were only greeted by a pillar of flame. Sarkhan has been waiting there, and he was not going to allow anybody to intrude. Then they all 3 began to fight, and as they fought, they quickly realized that since they were all planeswalkers, and their colored spells were nearly ineffective, as if something was absorbing the magic from them. Sarkhan being the more skilled hand-to-hand combatant, Chandra and Jace were quickly put on the defensive and in danger. Chandra, remembering the new spell she just learned, maybe it can get her out of this situation, she casts it. It's called Ghost Fire, powerful color of magic, but it also has another name, the Breath of Ugin. With all 4 conditions met, the Eye of Ugin, the 3 planeswalkers, and the Breath of Ugin cast, the shackles were released and the Eldrazi brood bursted forth. Holy bartered cow sparks, we are going to have to put a pin in the story right here. I know, this video has just already exceeded where I want it to be for how long my videos are, so I'm going to have to split it here because Zendikar just has so much to cover. However, I will always release the next one very quickly if I ever have to make part 2s like this, so if you don't want to miss out, here's my first and second reminder to subscribe and hit that bell notification if you just do not want to miss out, and it helps so much. I appreciate it. Feel free to suggest the new planes in the comments. I do tally them after I release these videos for the next one to go to, but other than that, guys, Terra out. Bye!